Hey, how's it going guys? It's Nate here. And Skyrim Civil War is probably one of the game's best elements. A brutal conflict between two flawed yet possibly righteous factions that the Dragonborn ultimately gets to determine. Most of us have played through the Civil War questline quite a few times now. However, despite this, there's still a few things buried within this great war that may have slipped by some of us. So whether it's secret siege weapons or secret spies, today we'll be taking a look at 5 things you may have missed in Skyrim Civil War. Starting off, the quest, the Jagged Crown, will be one of the first Civil War quests assigned to the player. In it, the Dragonborn in whichever faction they've sided with, you'll be given this quest for both the Imperial and Stormcloak factions, will be tasked with clearing a dungeon and capturing an artifact known as the Jagged Crown. The crown is an ancient, legendary relic, worn by long-forgotten High Kings of Skyrim thousands of years ago. Both the Empire and the Stormcloaks believe that if they can secure it for themselves, it'll give their cause more legitimacy and be a huge symbolic victory. Well, once you've captured the crown by killing the Draugr wearing it, either Legate Rikka or Galmar Stonefist will order you to bring it back to either Solitude or Windhelm respectively. However, what you might not have known is that at this point, you can actually betray your faction and deliver the crown to the rival side. This will ultimately result in your player switching sides for the rest of the Civil War as well. So, for instance, say you're a member of the Imperial Legion. Once you've gathered the crown, rather than bring it to General Tullius, you can instead head to Windhelm and give it to Ulfric. The vice versa is also possible. Doing this will unlock some unique dialogue from the leader of whichever faction you're betraying the other for. They'll initially be quite suspicious of you, but will ultimately appreciate the gesture and accept the Dragonborn into their ranks. From then on, you'll fight the Civil War from the side of whichever army you defected to.
Are you now? Normally I would have welcomed someone like you. Resourceful, clearly no friend of the Empire. But I've had some disturbing reports of you. Seen talking to General Tullius in Castle Dour, for example. So what do you have to say for yourself? How can I be sure you're not an Imperial spy? So you as good as admit you're working for the Imperials. Yet you walk in here and ask to join me. What are you playing at? You're not short of guts, are you? What's your game? Why would Tullius waste resources getting the crown, only to give it to me? Poison, perhaps? No, he's not that cunning. All right, I believe you. You aren't the first to turn away from the Empire in disgust. But remember, you're one of us now, forever. Whatever Imperial loyalties you may have had, that's all in the past. Forgotten.
Next, in the Stormcloak capital city of Windhelm, it's quite obvious that the local Dark Elves aren't being treated too well by their Nordic hosts. The Dunmer are forced to live in the city's Grey Quarter, a slum-like borough with abysmal living conditions. When outside of the Grey Quarter, they're subjected to severe verbal abuse, as Nords accuse them of treachery and hurl racial slurs at them. Meanwhile, the local government does nothing to improve their situation. The Dark Elves of Windhelm certainly don't feel like a very welcomed people. The reason for all of this negative behavior is that the Nordic inhabitants fear that the Dunmer are secretly supporting the Empire and are sympathetic to the Imperial mission, sabotaging the Stormcloaks. Ironically enough, the only reason any Dark Elves would have to support the Empire is their current mistreatment under the Nords. Luckily for everybody though, none of the Dark Elves seem all that interested in rebellion, even if they are hoping for an Imperial victory. Except for perhaps one. Ambaris Rendar is the Dunmer owner and bartender of the new Nissus Corner Club, in the Grey Quarter. He's especially antagonistic towards the Nords, who he feels mistreated by. He claims to have personally asked Jarl Ulfric to go to the Grey Quarter and assess the Dark Elves' living conditions, but Ulfric was too busy. Now his frustration has turned into anger, and he's developed a hatred of the Nordic population, even saying that he doesn't care about a string of recent murders in the city, seeing as all of the victims were Nords. And he might also be up to something himself. If you head upstairs in the Nissus Corner Club, tucked away on a shelf, you can find a full set of Imperial armor, an Imperial flag, as well as a copy of the book, The Firsthold Revolt. The book describes an uprising in the Altmeri city of Firsthold, led by dissatisfied peasants. Alright, this all looks very incriminating, but perhaps Embrace was just a former Imperial Legionnaire. However, I still doubt the Stormcloaks would be very happy to find all of this contraband in the man's room. Additionally, Ambrose makes no mention of serving within the Imperial Legion, even saying that his family's still fairly new to Skyrim altogether, only coming shortly after the eruption of the Red Mountain. Perhaps the Nords of Windhelm are right to be afraid of this particular Dark Elf. At number 3, Jarl Elisif the Fair is the Jarl of Solitude, and is loyal to the Empire. She rose to the city's throne after her husband Torrig, who was also High King of Skyrim, was killed by Ulfric Stormcloak. Now she rules over Skyrim's capital and claims to be the rightful High Queen. She's labeled as an essential NPC, and therefore cannot die in-game. Even if the Stormcloaks win the Civil War, they'll still choose to spare her. However, should you remove Elisif's essential status through the console and proceed to kill her before the Civil War is ended, you might just hear an interesting line of dialogue from Stormcloak soldiers afterwards.
It is whispered that one of the Daedric princes himself is behind the murder of Elisif. It would seem even the nobility of Oblivion favors our cause.
Now this makes no type of sense. Elisif isn't supposed to be killable at all. Yet apparently Bethesda included this strange dialogue anyway for some reason. Well, what the guard says isn't the result of ghosts in our game or anything. It's actually part of what's been left over from a cut quest called Boethia's Bidding. A look in the game's files reveals that Bethesda had designed a quest in which the Daedric Prince of Conspiracy, Assassination, and Murder, Boethia, would have the Dragonborn become a bodyguard of Jarl Elisif, only to use that position to get close to the Jarl and ultimately assassinate her. This quest was mostly completed. However, for whatever reason, Bethesda decided to remove it from the game, possibly due to all of the conflicts that could emerge between it and the rest of the Civil War. But Bethesda simply decided to leave in this Stormcloak dialogue should she die. See, there's a rational explanation behind everything. Except Bigfoot. For a fort spot, during significant city siege battles, such as the one at Whiterun, Solitude, or Windhelm, you can see massive fireballs being flung into the city. Usually these things don't do too much damage aside from certain scripted events. But did you know you can actually operate these catapults for yourself? Kind of in some capacity. Whenever a city is being besieged, nearby there will always be a specific siege camp. That's where these catapults are stationed. You can approach the catapults and interact with them, causing them to fire out ammunition. NPCs also can do the same. The fireballs flung from the catapults won't do any damage at all. They only produce a pretty nice looking visual effect. However, I found it to be quite amusing to use regardless. And finally, last on our list, it goes without saying that the Civil War is quite a brutal conflict. But there's actually a Necromancer who has a secret plan to end it all. Lua Alskaven is a Redguard conjurer, held up in the ancient ruin of Anselvund. Once inside this crypt, you'll automatically begin the quest, A Love Beyond Death, where the player will have to fight their way through hordes of Draugr to kill Alskaven, who is enslaving them. Once Lua is dead, two ghosts will appear, thanking the Dragonborn for freeing them and thus ending the quest. But after the quest is over, if you choose to hang around and do a bit of investigating, you'll find out what this Redguard's true motivations were. Picking the lock into her personal chambers will reveal a letter on her desk titled Imperial Condolences. It's an apology letter written all the way back in the year 475 of the Fourth Era, the time of the Great War, addressed to Lua. In it, an Imperial prefect regretfully informs her of the death of her husband, who died battling the Thalmor in the Imperial City. Her husband fought at one of the biggest battles of the Great War, but ultimately passed away 25 years ago. Nearby the apology letter is Lua's personal journal, which describes her own motivations. She writes about her discovery of the Anselvund ruin, and how she was planning to use a Draugr as a vessel to resurrect her lost husband. But as she got close, the Civil War broke out. She claims to be frustrated by the fact that Ulfric waited so long to rise up. And she's also pretty angry at the Empire for letting her husband die. So she plans to break both of these powers on her own. She wants to build an entire army of the undead, and use that army to march against the Empire and the Stormcloaks, defeating both of them. She believes that she can defeat two corrupt powers, and ultimately bring peace to Skyrim. But I don't think she recognizes the irony in building a slave army to bring peace, but oh well, let a person dream. But with that final tone of optimism, we are going to wrap up. Thanks for stopping by, everyone. If you enjoyed the video, like ratings are as always very much appreciated. And which of these were your favorite? What tiny details have you caught as a result of Skyrim Civil War that you think others might have missed? Leave a comment down below. Again, thanks for stopping by, everyone, and hope to catch you all in my next video. Peace out, everybody.